Yes, Scott, I agree. You might have to explain that once or twice more, I think, over the course of the day, just for my benefit. Alex Foden starts on pole position, that much I can tell you. Another driver who's done a bit of fun cupping in the past, with Richard Jepp alongside, the early championship leader. Joe Moss and Andrew Dyer will share that second row of the grid, then Jack Wheeler and Jack Burgess. All of those top 6 drivers certainly potential race winners. Toby Owen and Luke Bate, they should be up there as well. They start together on the 4th row of the grid, and the top 10 then completed by George Antoniou and Elliot Lettis, another quick driver who should move forward from 10th on the grid. Whoops, steady on. Next is Samuel Johnston with Sandro Proietti on row 6 together. Row 7, Carter Steele and Ben Johnson with Chris Brewster and Luke Sawyer on the 8th row of the grid. Then, row 9, Jude McGreevy and John Sykes with Ruben Lowe and Evan Parker completing the top 20 of what will be a 26-car grid in theory. Alistair Maring and James Savage are next, ahead of Abby Bennett and Jake Gittus, with Gary Johnston and Sean Feehan at the back of the grid. Sean will be hoping that he can move a little bit further forward from there. So, cars then lined up on the grid, ready to go racing. They'll have their formation lap, of course, first before the race kicks off. It'll be a 15-minute race, as is standard procedure within the CityCar Cup. And Richard Jepp and Alex Foden starting together on that front row of the grid. Jepp 4th in the championship last year, Alex Foden 5th in the championship. They finished only 13 points apart, those two, so that immediately bodes well for a pretty close contest between the two of them. Ben Spencer, of course, was last year's champion by a similarly, in fact, an even narrower margin. Only 6 points separated Ben Spencer and Alistair May at the end of what was, I would say, the most competitive season of CityCar Cup racing we've ever had, Scott. It's always got good grids. It's always been popular. It's a cracking formula. A brilliant gap in the market, actually, that the BRSCC found with this championship, which is something the club tends to excel at. But last year, the quality of the racing was sort of second to none. In fact, there were a couple of times last year where I was asked, you know, which of the championships I look forward to commentating on the most, and very often the CityCar Cup was towards the top of that list.
Yeah, they struck a chord with this championship ever since it came in as a class within the Club Sport Trophy back in 2020 when they launched it in the middle of the pandemic. And it's like, launching a new series in the middle of the pandemic is usually madness, but it made it work. And the great thing was they had about sort of the first standalone race in Croft in November, and I thought, okay, we'll see if we get sort of 2025. There's about 39 that turned up at the first round for 2021, and it wasn't a case of how many we're going to get, it's where you're going to put them all, because there's so many, and the popularity has continued over the years. The fact they get sold out grids just about everywhere they go. The Formula is fantastic, and the Student Motorsport Challenge, which has also been contest, which has been brought in over the last few years, is excellent to see, to the point now where there's a few teams who are getting to grips with running these cars, but you've now got student motorsport teams and outfits that now, for example, they've locked out the front row, Alex Foden and Richard Jepp. These are teams now getting quicker and quicker and faster. Yes, there might be the most well-versed teams running it year after year, but it shows the calibre of not only the programmes that they run, but also the people that are running within it. And that was the whole point of Student Motorsport, run by John Paul Latham, and to bring in the Student Motorsport contest from 2022 onwards, to give not only colleges, universities, and even sixth forms, in the case of Queen Ethelberg was on top of that, and other education establishments, the chance to run motorsport programs, but to give their students genuine real-world motorsport experience to kind of shape the engineers, technicians, designers, mechanics, and etc. of the future going forward. It's a really good proving ground for them, and it's fantastic to see they've got some 13, 14 teams in here, and it's still as competitive as it ever has been.
Yeah, absolutely so. I remember again when I first started covering this championship a number of years ago, one of the student motorsport cars made the top 10 by the end of the race. That was seen as quite an achievement, actually, whereas now, as you quite rightly said, it's standard practice for those cars to be up there winning races, so they're very well prepared, and it is such a great initiative. There is nothing that can ever replace real-world experience, and it's such a difficult thing to do in motorsport. It's a very competitive industry. There are lots of jobs in motorsport, but knowing where to go and then getting actually those positions when you don't have the experience is always tricky, but this gives them that first rung on the ladder. It introduces them to motorsport, gives them that opportunity to work in the industry, gain that experience, and as we've seen, they really do know what they're doing. They're very well prepared cars, and it's going to be another fierce competition within the student motorsport element of the CityCar Cup in 2026. Cars then making their way around onto the grid after a fairly leisurely green flag lap, but the drivers keen to generate as much tyre temperature as they possibly can. These are short wheelbase front wheel drive cars, not the most powerful, but they can still be a bit leery on cold tyres, and so the drivers need to make sure they've got enough grip when they barrel off into Rich's corner. probably 3 abreast on the first lap of the race.
Won't be uncommon, is it? Two facts I'll give you about CityCar for Snetterton. Snetterton, as a circuit, holds the championship's closest winning margin record, because it was last year here Josh Jackson won a race at Snetterton on the 300 circuit by the massive margin of 46/1000 of a second. That's the closest finish history. Will we get that here today? Possibly. Break that. It also holds the record for the largest ever championship grid, 44, and that was last year here as well. So not only did they start to break records, but Snetterton is probably the most well-versed circuit for CityCar. It's almost like their spiritual home in terms of where they come here the most. But it's the first time on the 200 circuit, so we have had qualifying, but now race lap records to set, as we're about to get our first of 3 races underway for CityCar. If you've never seen it before, hold tight. They might not be the fastest cars, but they are an absolute riot to watch.
Yes, don't be fooled. This could well be one of the best races of the day. We're starting strong here on this Snetterton Sunday. The grid is formed, eyes now turn towards the starting gantry, and Alex Foden and Richard Jett together on the front row. Jett, the orange car, the white and green Citroen alongside his Foden number 41. Away they go, and as you'd expect from these low-powered cars, it's a pretty even start from the front row men. I think maybe Richard Jett has a nose ahead on the outside line as we rush down towards Richard's corner. In fact, he's got his full car ahead. It wasn't a great second phase of the start for Foden, who's now trying to defend second position from Andrew Dyer. Hold your breath, everyone. You can go 3 wide through Rich's in these small city cars, but that doesn't mean it's easy. I think they've just about managed to get through without any major dramas. Now they hit the braking zone at the hairpin, and this is where things can get very, very dicey indeed. That's Proietti, I think, coming steaming round the outside in the Liqui Moly car. There's a big squeeze through the left-hand kink onto the back straight, but again, they've all done really well to get through that first sequence of corners in one piece. Jett then leads the way. Foden slots into second, Dyer there in third position, and thankfully, Scott, a clean start.
Yeah, and it's also Student Motorsport 1, 2, 3, because it is Norfolk Racing leading the way with Jett, who's the most decorated driver in Student Motorsport history. 56 podiums in total, including 24 wins in the category, and he's looking to try and make it, if he can, 25. That'll be his 25th Student Motorsport win if he can hold on to this one for the next 15 minutes. But he's got the 2 Rob Boston team cars, which are the defending team champions from Student Motorsport last year. Can pack their way through 26 of them. It's not the entire field. We've got 41 entered, 39 qualified, but you have got quite a few. They're side by side there between 57 and 61. That is between Jack Wheeler and a decent start for the 14 of Gary Johnson, in fact, who's quite far up the order considering where he started, which was a little further back. Johnson was Ben Johnson starting 14th and already climbed his way up into the top 10. So impressive start as they come up through Murray's for the first time, and it looks as though they're all pretty calm. That's Luke Bate, number 95. I think if I remember saying he debuted at Silverstone last year, was actually pretty quick on the front rows. So towards the front, it was pretty impressive, making a one-off appearance. Remember that from last year. So now joining the East Surrey College team and actually running pretty strong in the top 10 after he qualified there too. So it's Jeff who leads with Foden, Dyer, Burgess and Moss in the top 5, and everyone's starting to pack off a little bit now into little groups as they find their own racing room on lap number 2.
Yes, these races tend to build in momentum as the cars build in momentum over the early laps, and around a slipstream heavy circuit like this, the racing is going to be pretty intense. That's intense as well. There's a car in the barriers heavily at the first corner. It's the 131. That is Evan Parker, and that car's gone quite heavily into the barrier, and he's continuing. That is astonishing. He's got no rear bumper, but that was a hefty hit into the wall, and Evan carries on as if nothing happened.
Well, I think if my stats are correct, this is his championship debut. So, I mean, welcome to CityCar Cup, and I think also as well, there's got an SW Motorsports rollover protection system. It didn't roll over, but I think one we could say, as was proven by Top Gear with these cars, they build them sturdy in the Czech Republic, and there's what's left of his bumper. So he's carried on, but one racing lap, and he goes into Ritchie's faster than he thought he could, bounces off a tyre wall, and carries on like it never happened.
Right, okay, well, there's me thinking that's our first safety car of the day, but well done, Evan, carried on. I suspect he might be destined for the pit lane, but at least the car is still running, which is remarkable, quite frankly. Back to the front of the field, though, and as we suspected, Richard Jett is not getting away here from Alex Foden. Foden sticking with him in qualifying. There was next to nothing between them. Foden was only something like 0.03 of a second quicker than Richard Jett. In fact, the top 3 in qualifying were separated by less than half a tenth of a second. It was remarkably close between the front runners, and it looks as though in the race it's going to be equally as competitive. Foden, Dyer, the order at the front. Jett, Foden, Dyer, the order at the front. I think Richard Jett's got a slightly dodgy transponder, and Jack Burgess tagging along with them. So it's sort of a leading group of 4 at this stage, with a bit of a gap back then, 2.3 seconds back to Joe Moss in 5th place.
down towards the Montreal hairpin. Remember, it's the 200 layouts. Of course, they'd normally go full 180 degrees. If they try that, they'd be met with a series of concrete barriers to say, you ain't going this way today, sunshine. Go to the left and go to the opposite side. And you're right. It's very much like Snetterton used to be, where they come off of Ritchie's, then what they called Sear, onto what was called the Revit Straight. This is what was the Revit Straight. It's now the Bentley Straight, named after the Bentley Le Mans car that won in 2003 that was developed here at some point during its lifespan. And you can see the top 4 already gone through. Challenge on for 5th. You've got Joe Moss in the red, number 23, challenged by Toby Owen, who's a former Mazda MX-5 racer, giving him a NASCAR-style tandem trial push. I did think this would be like yesterday with Fun Cup, where it was relatively fast NASCAR-style racing. We're going to get rather leisurely but fun NASCAR-style racing. I know you're a NASCAR advocate yourself from the UK. Joe Moss turns his way through. Big thump of the curve from behind from Chris Brewster in 64 as he turns his way out. He's been chased by Luke Bate. The next group of cars is headed by Elliot Lettis with Sandro Proietti, who's part of the Bacon Racing Squad, who they're quite well versed in Citroen C1s, given they usually race in the C1 Endurance Series with a Liqui sponsored car. There he's just, you can see a glimpse of his car. But he's also giving a go to translate how they do with that in CityCar Cup, which the differences are these cars use more specific road suspension. They use stickier Nankang tyres that they can use as well. They've got suspension bushes on top of them and a bit of a championship map on top, plus a back box exhaust. So they look a little bit different. They don't lean on their door handles like the endurance cars do. They're much more sturdy. I've driven one before at Silverstone, driven by Racing a couple of years ago, which is actually back for this year, which you mentioned very briefly, and drove it at Silverstone in the dry, and it is like a massive go-kart. You just drive it into the corners of Silverstone National particularly. You can basically, apart from a couple of braking points, you can pin the throttle and just keep it pinned for about 75% of a lap there. They really are faster to drive than you think. It's all about momentum in these cars.
Absolutely so, and that usually is the most fun you can have behind the wheel. That's what drivers tell us. If you give them a really powerful car with lots of downforce, it's not quite as enjoyable as, let's face it, quite a slow car, which you have to drive the wheels off to keep the momentum up through the corners. Good battling going on here. In fact, they're 3 abreast into the hairpin, and that nearly went wrong. The 21 car gets squeezed out onto the grass. That's Carter Steele, and he'll lose a couple of positions as a result. One to the number 14 car, which came through. That was George Antonio, who started inside the top 10 and has dropped down the order significantly. I think that's 15th place that he's just reclaimed. He started 9th on the grid, so George with a bit of work to do to get back to where he started the race. There's the 430 of Sandro Proietti, and here is the lead battle. Absolutely nose to tail between Richard Jepp and Alex Foden. They're dropping Andrew Dyer slightly now, and I did spot the windscreen wiper working on Andrew Dyer's Toyota Aygo there as it came out of Brundle and Nelson. Possibly a little bit of precipitation in the air, hopefully not enough to affect the grip levels, but a bit of psychological rain maybe for the 3rd place driver. Foden, though, couldn't be a lot closer to Richard Jepp at this stage. Didn't get a great exit there, Foden, from the final corner, but he'll slipstream his way, hopefully, back onto the rear bumper of the leading Peugeot. And Richard Jepp in the Peugeot 108, which debuted in the championship a couple of years ago as a development car, has been incorporated properly into the series now and is running well.
Oh.
That's not great though. The 34 car off, that's Luke Sawyer, and a lot of steam coming from the front of the car. I think he's been into the barrier, hasn't he? That front end's been crunched in. That might have done a radiator, and if that's the case, that'll be his race run. Yeah,
he's thumping the steering wheel with frustration. It looks like it might have been a self-induced incident, and considering he's come off Coram in towards Murray's, it's not the easiest thing to do. But yes, they are quite sturdy cars, but they can get sideways through Coram, and if that's the case, they're quite easy cars to lose and get sideways if you're not careful. And it might have been he just got pushed a little too hard through Coram, lost the back end, and it's snapped the other way and just bounced off the barrier. So that might well be at least covered with yellow flags whilst they can recover that car. He's out of the car now, as you say, the front end on that Toyota Aygo steaming away, hands on hips, with a resided look on his face underneath that helmet. Just gone past half distance in this race. I'm looking out the window to see if the safety car is going to be scrambled. Keep an eye on whether those yellow lights do come on. I'm looking at Sandro Proietti, who he's chasing after Jack Wheeler and Luke Bate by the looks of things. This is now Toby Owen, who's got past the 23 of Joe Moss, and also been chased by Chris Brewster, who's in white, yellow and black behind him. This is the fight for outside of the top 4, because Jack Burgess has escaped by about 4 and a bit seconds. So top 2 are pretty clear out in front, and Jack Burgess is trying to give chase. He's in what I call a little bit of no man's land. He's not catching the cars in front, but he's not losing time to the cars behind either. Yeah, a bit of a lonely race perhaps in prospect here for Jack Burgess, unless of course we get a safety car for the Luke Sawyer car that's off just to the right of the drivers here as they turn into Murray's corner. There is the stricken Aygo. No sign of a safety car yet, in fairness. They're covering that under yellow flags for the time being, and that suggests they're going to continue to do so and let the race run uninterrupted, which is good news. Leaders have just crossed the line, separated again by only 0.3 of a second, but Andrew Dyer in 3rd place sets the
fastest lap of the race. So at one point or another, all of those top 3 drivers have held the fastest lap. And therefore, of course, the early lap record here on the Snetterton 200 circuit at 1:40.216 there. That was about 3/10 quicker than the leader.
Impressive stuff. So Alex Foden, who I don't believe has won a race in the CityCar Cup before. Richard Jepp has won several. Of course, he's won several within student motorsport. But Alex Foden doesn't appear to have one in his stats. Oh, that's Chris Brewster, who was... Tourbillon was trying to re-attack Joe Moss. He then came under threat on the apex from Chris Brewster, who did have enough room to come up the inside. He's now slotted into line back into the slipstream of the 42 car, but that defence or that attack of Tourbillon is now lost him time. He's back in the slipstream now, and also trying to latch onto the 3 of them just behind them is Luke Bates in that East Surrey College car, number 95. Should mention, of course, for Student Motorsport, it is a 1-2-3 overall and in the race for Student Motorsport. So it's Jepp from Foden from Dyer, that's Northbrook College from the 2 Boston College racing cars, and then 4th and 5th and 6th, where you've got Bate and Jack Wheeler, who is back in 9th position as well. So 95 and 57. So Jack Wheeler has moved to Northbrook College. He was an East Surrey College driver. He's now in the second car, which was driven by, I want to say the name of the other driver who was at Northbrook Racing. I'm sure someone from Student Motorsport will tell me. But there was he's replaced another driver who was in that car before, but it's now a different driver in the mix. Just under 5 minutes to go now, so 2/3 of the race already gone. And Joe Moss just holding nice. He's 3 winning his way, just lifting that inside rear. Well, they are pretty stiffly sprung on these gas shocks, are these CityCar Cup cars. Top 3 go across past us, and they're pretty much nose to tail, so there could be a change in the mix as well, as we've still got plenty more racing still to go.
And Andrew Dyer, briefly, in fact, no, does take that fastest lap and improves upon it, so 1:39.984, first driver into the 39s, but they're all continuing to pump in personal best laps as the pace really starts to hot up now into the closing stages. We're 2/3 of the way through this 15-minute race, and this is about as close as the leading 3 have been, but Foden sitting in the wheel tracks of Richard Jepp. He seems to close coming into the corners, but isn't getting off the corners quite as well as Richard Jepp. I've spotted that a few times at Murray's, the final turn. Same sort of situation there through the Wilson hairpin, so that means that Jepp then is able to just keep the Citroën at arm's length and not then have to defend at the end of the straight. Peugeot then leads Citroën, leads Toyota, so the 3 brands in the championship, represented in the championship, are represented in the top 3. Foden just shows his nose there to the inside. I don't think he was quite close enough to actually go for the move, but just trying to distract Richard Jepp as best he can. He's had a really good exit this time, ironically, from Nelson, has Alex Foden, and he really does now look to be hunting around a little bit more spiritedly in the mirrors of the race leader.
Crucially, look at my stats. If Alex Foden wins this, it will be his first ever Compact Cup, CityCar, wrong championship. They're coming later with the Supercar. If he wins, it'll be his first CityCar Cup victory. Now, he has, according to my stats, taken a 2nd place and 2/3. So he's finished on the podium 3 times. He has taken a pole and also 5 from today, and 5 fastest laps on top of that as well, but hasn't ever scored a victory. And of course, he's in a very well sorted car, which last year was driven by, of all people, Stuart Bliss last year, so he knows exactly what to do with a car like this, and it's last year's defending Student Motorsport champions. As for Andrew Dyer, he has taken it. He's taken 8 wins. He'll be looking for win number 9 if he can. And for Richard Jepp, if he wins, it'll be win number 5 of his career overall. Of course, he's won plenty in Student Motorsport, but he recently, in the last couple of years, started winning overall, which was quite overdue in the last couple of years. Dyer just moving around, just posturing around his teammates, trying to put himself in his mirrors. And that was a slightly later turn in for Jepp to get the apex, to get a possibly different run off the corner. But despite the fact they're all on a tow together, and it's Jepp who's punching the biggest hole in the air out of the 3 of them, no one's really kind of getting close enough on the straight to make a move here.
No, and again, I think that is partly because Jepp is excelling on corner exit, so the slipstream isn't actually as powerful in these cars as you might think. They're not very aerodynamic, but they don't go very quickly either down the straights. The faster you go, the more powerful the tow is, so you've actually got to really nail the corner exit in order to then benefit massively from the slipstream. So you can see there Foden closed back in to within a car length of the race leader, but not actually close enough to get alongside. This is where he seems strong, Alex Foden, coming out of Brundle and Nelson. Had a little look to the inside into the right-hander at Coram a lap ago, did Foden. I don't think he's quite close enough to do that this time. They're going to be starting their final lap this time by. So if Foden's going to do this, he's starting to run out of time. And of course, he has to be careful, because if he goes for the move and it doesn't work, it could well cost him 2nd place.
Really could. Of course, his teammate rapidly sat behind him to try and take it away from him. They pitched their way through Murray's. Of course, I don't think there's a yellow flag down there anymore, because the driver's gone behind the barrier and the car is not in a fast pass the circuit, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Across the line they'll go with just under a minute and a half to go. So last time around on this first race of the weekend for the CityCar Cup, and Foden is closer to Jepp than Dyer is to Foden. So he's trying to close in on that slipstream. Dyer didn't get as much. He sets the fast lap of the race. He's pushing now, takes that brand new lap record. He'll be the first person to take it, 1:39.950. And now he might have the undercut here. He's trying to leverage himself alongside, might get the side drive. Looks one way, then the other down towards Montreal. Has to go to the outside line, but he's forcing Jep to fend. He's off the line. It's not the worst line to take, because if you hug the inside and then get the better exit off onto the Bentley straight, you can get more momentum. But Foden looks as though he knows that a win is at stake here. Onto the back straight for the last time. It is really now or never, and Jep knows that he's not comfortable on the racing line. He has to go defensive to try and move safely, to try and break that toe, but both the Boston College cars are locked in behind him. It is going to be, touchwood, a Student Motorsport 1, 2, 3. Which order it's going to be, and whether one that will take their first victory ever in CityCar Cup, we'll find out in half a lap's time.
Yeah, Foden was closer than ever going onto the straight, but still not able to make the move into Brundle and Nelson. He's running out of opportunities now, because really through this second half of the lap, you're sort of reliant upon a mistake from the car ahead in order to make a move. Foden again has a little look to the inside at the bomb hole, but that's not an overtaking opportunity. Easy flat out in these CityCar Cup cars, and you'll see they don't even dab the brakes going into corner either. It's maybe a lift halfway round the corner, but perhaps not actually in these low power but relatively high grip cars. Foden's got one more opportunity maybe to the inside at Murray's. He's not close enough into the final corner though, and I think it's probably going to finish in the order that it started. Richard Jep then hangs on. He never had more than about 1 or 2 car lengths, and that's not a huge gap at all in CityCar Cup terms, but he defends to the flag and claims the victory, and that is continuing now this fantastic run of results for Richard Jep. 3 races, 3 race wins for the driver of car 65, and he will extend his championship lead. Alex Foden has to settle for second, which equals his career best finish, and Andrew Dyer comes home in third to make that, as Scott said, a Student Motorsport 1, 2, 3. Then it is Jack Burgess, fourth, ahead of Chris Brewster, Joe Moss, Toby Owen, Luke Bate, Jack Wheeler, and there, Sandro Proietti, who keeps a baying pack of drivers at bay. 5-car battle that was for 10th position, but Sandro Proietti was ultimately able to hang on. The rest of them streak through, and a big grid of cars, 26 started. I believe we only lost 1, because, would you believe it, Evan Parker, who had that sizable shunt at Rich's corner, not only did he carry on, but he didn't come into the pit lane, and actually he gained a few positions before the checkered flag. He finished in the end, in fact he's about to come across the line, in 22nd place. Very impressive stuff. Richard Jep then, the winner once again. That's his 3rd win from 3 starts this year. Alex Foden and Andrew Dyer 2nd and 3rd respectively, ahead of Jack Burgess and Chris Brewster. Joe Moss, Toby Owen, Luke Bate, Jack Wheeler and Sandro Proietti complete the top 10. Then it was Samuel Johnston ahead of Elliot Lettis and John Sykes. George Antonio ended up 14th in the number 14 car, ahead of Ben Johnson and Carter Steele, with Jude McGreevy, Ruben Lowe, Alistair Mehring and James Savage completing the top 20. Abby Bennett was 21st, ahead of Evan Barker. That's remarkable, and what a great testament to the strength of those cars that he was able to not only finish but actually overtake a few people before the flag. Jake Gittus was 23rd, ahead of Sean Feehan, Gary Johnston and Luke Sawyer, as we saw, the only non-finisher after his shunt at the final turn. And the main difference, I think, really between him and Evan Parker is that Parker went into the barrier back